There's no surer sign of things opening up than the automotive industry getting back to what it does best, and that is launching new cars. Delayed due to the second wave, the all-new fourth generation Skoda Octavia is finally here, and obviously it's an important car for Skoda, but more than that, there is a greater burden resting on its shoulders. You see, there is no real rival to the Octavia. There is of course the Elantra, but for all intents and purposes, this segment of cars is all but finished. And the reason for that are the onslaught of SUVs. And that's why in this test, the big question that we will be asking is, can the Octavia temper our enthusiasm for SUVs? To find out, we've got what I think, in my opinion, is the best SUV in the 20 to 30 lakh price bracket, and that is the Hyundai Tucson. Obviously, this is not a straight up comparison test, but we will be asking this question whether cars still are relevant in the face of SUVs. Now, before we go ahead, let me remind you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to stay notified for all our videos, because stuff like this you will only find on the Evo India channel. Now, when you look at it on the face of it, Tucson versus Octavia, who does such things? But watch till the end, I guarantee you will see the logic behind this test. Of course, this test is going to be long, so if you want to skip ahead directly to the comparison, check out the chapters and you can skip ahead. And as always, we would love to hear your comments. Car or SUV, what is relevant in this day and age? Drop it in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, smash that like button. We should start with the styling because that has always been a strength of the Octavia. Mature, sophisticated and also restrained. Design that stands the test of time. This fourth generation Octavia definitely looks more expensive. The bold chrome-laden grille, angular full LED headlamps with cornering function, the heavily ridged bonnet, the strong shoulder lines that are even crisper and even more deeply etched into the flanks. You get a coupe-like roofline which aids in the excellent 0.24 drag coefficient that is claimed to be among the best in this segment. This version is the LNK and it gets more chrome around the fog lamps, a different design for the 17-inch wheels and 8 airbags. At the rear, you get LED tail lamps, dynamic turn indicators and of course the gigantic boot. 600 liters which opens up into 1555 liters with the rear seats dropped. The Octavia continues with the same MQB platform as the outgoing Octavia and the wheelbase remains the same at 2680 millimeters. The length has gone up only slightly. Now, obvious question would be, new Octavia, why hasn't it become bigger? But if it got bigger, then why would you buy the Superb? So that's your rationale out there. And in terms of space, it is adequate. Now, the front seat is adjusted to my driving position. I'm 5'9" and I still have good space over here. Okay, there's no extra free knee room. My knees are sort of touching the backs of the front seat, but it's not uncomfortable. And even though this has a coupe-like roofline, I still have this much free headroom, so it is comfortable. And in terms of the creature comforts, you get this armrest, you get cup holders out here, 2 USB slots. You don't have a separate climate zone, but you have blowers for the back. You have a nice pocket here to put your mobile phone. So it is actually fine. And you also get these sun blinds. From the front seat, it is all new. It starts with this 2-spoke steering wheel, which actually is the new Skoda design language, and we'll also see the similar designed wheel on the upcoming Kushaq, the midsize SUV. The dashboard is completely new. So you get this floating infotainment screen. It is 10 inches. You also get the virtual cockpit, so the digital cockpit. This is 10.25 inches. So you can adjust the displays. You got the speedometer in the middle, the digital speedometer. You can also adjust that to have 2 dials, a single dial, all of that, a lot of functionality. Now the screen, it also runs a new OS, so this is not similar to what the Superb has, and it sort of has a Android kind of OS. You have a hotspot, you got your Bluetooth out here, so similar to how you would use a tablet. Also, this is cool, there is a slider out here for the volume controls. So this entire bottom of the infotainment screen is a slider for the volume, and then when you press this climate button out here and you use 2 fingers, and you can adjust the temperature. It is cool, but I've been driving this car for a couple of days now, and also it is a bit gimmicky because when you're driving, to use this, you actually have to take your eyes off the road. Whereas with a normal volume knob, you can actually just turn the knob without having to look at it. And with normal aircon knobs, you don't have to look at the screen to actually adjust your temperature. What else do you get? You get a wireless charger, you get 2 USB slots, you get a third USB slot out here. I thought I would make a joke about it, but then somebody pointed out that that is for the dash cam. So actually it is very sensible. You get space under the glove box, you get your cup holders out here. This is new. This is your by-wire control for the gear lever. So you don't have a physical connection between the operation out here and the gearbox. It is all electronic. So because of that, you don't have a manual handbrake also. So no more handbrake turns in the Octavia. Boo-hoo. You get a lot of space, huge space in the door pockets, a big glove box, and that is also cooled. These seats, they are actually suede. So this part is suede and the sides are leather. Actually, it works better in our Indian heat and conditions because leather, your backside starts to sweat, but suede, it actually keeps it cooler. So that said, this does not have seat coolers. That I would have actually liked. Another thing I must point out are these aircon vents. It looks cool, but in the Indian environment and with our heat, you actually want a cold blast of air coming at your face. Whereas this, because it is positioned so low, it's either coming at your hands, or if you put your hand down, it is coming at your chest. It never really comes at your face. So for India, because of our extreme heat, I would have preferred these aircon vents to be a little higher up. That said, with all this low, you get a nice view outside and you get great visibility too. There are also neat features. LED mood lighting is of course usual fare. You get gesture operated reading lights, storage compartments for umbrellas in the doors. There are 5 USB-C ports, including one near the mirror for the dash cam. There is wireless charging, nets and hooks for luggage, and sun blinds for the back seat. What you don't get in the Octavia is a sunroof. Now, nowhere in the world does the Octavia get a sunroof. So that's why they're not going to engineer a sunroof just for India. But in the Indian context, well, you don't get a sunroof. Now, I have to point out that this should not be the reason to not buy the Octavia. What this LNK gets is a 600-watt Canton sound system with 12 speakers, including a subwoofer, and you also get connectivity features via the My Skoda app. This has emergency features like roadside assistance, SOS, and you can even geofence the car and check driving behavior in case your driver or kid is enjoying the thrill of driving. Right then, the thrill of driving. Now, as you all know, the entire Volkswagen group, and in India, the Skoda Volkswagen group has transitioned to all petrol engines. So diesels are completely out. Diesel is a bad word when you talk to anybody from Skoda or Volkswagen. And it is worth remembering that a big part of the Octavia's success was down to those diesel engines. If you remember that very first Gen 1 Octavia, it introduced us to modern, powerful, turbocharged diesel engines at an affordable price. And then after that, the PD engines and the TDI engines, they were all fantastic. Powerful as well as very efficient. And that's the reason why we loved the Octavia so much. But all that is in the past. Now it is pure petrol power, and at least Skoda, they have not compromised. So you don't get a 1.5 engine. I'm sure that will come later on. This new Octavia gets the full fat 2-liter TSI engine. You get 187 bhp of power, 320 Newton meters of torque, and when I put my foot down, this engine, it really does get the Octavia to move. 0 to 100 takes 7.4 seconds. The top speed is 240 kilometers per hour. So the Octavia, it is quick. But this Octavia, the overriding sense that you get is of comfort. Now, as soon as you sit into it, you have that enhanced sense of spaciousness, of airiness. Okay, there is no sunroof, but that does not matter because this does feel like a spacious cabin. As for the chassis, the wheelbase is the same as the outgoing Octavia, and the hard points of this MQB platform are also retained. But there are obviously detail improvements, and all those detailed refinements have gone into making the Octavia ride better. So the suspension has better damping compliance and it feels more sophisticated because this car obviously is more mature than the outgoing car and will be more expensive than the outgoing car, and a lot of that expense has gone into these new dampers. So the compliance is actually astonishingly good, especially the low speed bumps and those sharp speed breakers that you hit, you barely feel anything. This rides really, really well. As for the handling, well, Octavia's always handled well. They always delivered on the thrill of driving, and you can continue to push the Octavia, even though the balance is now skewed towards comfort, but it does not compromise on the handling, which is so important in the Octavia scheme of things. There is good bite from the front end. You can lean on the front, you can push it harder, and it is carrying a fair bit of speed through these corners. And because the suspension has compliance, so all the mid-corner bumps, it actually takes it in its stride. It doesn't get thrown around. So you can hustle it. But I must point out that there is more float in the suspension. It is more skewed towards ride quality rather than handling. It is happier being driven at 8/10 rather than 10/10. So you got to keep that in mind. You can lean on it, you can hustle it, but I think the earlier Octavia enjoyed being hustled a little more than this one. Now the chassis, the wheelbase is the same as the outgoing Octavia. The hard points are also the same on the MQB platform, but this gets the more sophisticated multi-link rear suspension. It's not the torsion beam. So you can feel that when you're driving it, and that's the big difference when you're hitting mid-corner bumps and it stays stable and planted, it doesn't get thrown around. That's because of the more sophisticated suspension. As for the steering, this is the same electromechanical setup as the outgoing Octavia. Now in the city, it is so easy to drive. It is finger light easy. But out here in the hills, I would have preferred a little more weight, a little more feedback through the steering. In terms of precision, there is nothing wrong. And all these Volkswagen Group front-wheel drive platforms have been really good in terms of their dynamic abilities. But it's just that now this Octavia is more towards the comfort side of things. The Octavia actually feels like a big car now. Earlier, it felt almost like a big hatchback. Now it feels like a big car. Even the steering, I don't know if it is my memory playing tricks on me, but I think it is slightly larger in terms of diameter than the outgoing Octavia. And all that just puts you in a more comfortable and calm frame of mind. It almost tells you that, what's the rush, man? Chill, take it easy. So if you want to really hustle it, I guess you'll have to wait for the RS. The RS is coming, but it will come next year and it will come as a CBU. So all those earlier RS strengths, which was performance on a budget, and the reason for that was because it was assembled in India, so it could be priced well. All of that I don't think will hold true with this new RS. It will be expensive, which is a shame because the RS has always been about affordable thrills. But anyway, we'll cry about that later on when we get our hands on the RS. For now, 2-liter TSI engine. Does it feel firecracker quick? Actually, no. The earlier TSI, the 1.8, it actually gave you a nice kick when it came on boost. This is more refined, it is more linear. There isn't much in the way of turbo lag. But the same criticism that we've leveled at the Hyundai turbo petrol engines, wherein it's become a little too smooth and it's robbed it of its bit of turbocharged character, it's sort of the same out here. There is performance and everything, but it doesn't feel like a firecracker. It's not whip quick. You get paddle shifters for the 7-speed DSG gearbox. which does let you control the gearbox manually, and it is a quick shifting gearbox. It does everything. Let me not be too critical about it. It does everything, does it all well. But the Octavia is not the out and out driver's car that it once was. Maybe our benchmarks and perspective has changed, but it feels a little too superbish, if you know what I mean. You don't get any driving mode, so there is no sport mode or comfort mode. In any case, the suspension is steel, so this is the one mode that you get, and that is it. The gearbox, you can put it into sport mode, so that does make the shifts a little more snappy, but that's about it in terms of altering the character of the, I was just going to say Superb because this reminds me so much about the Superb. And then speaking about the gearbox, if you've noticed, this is the new by-wire controller for the gearbox, which does liberate more space around here, so you don't have that gear lever sticking up. So you have a big pad, the wireless charging pad, 2 USB slots over here, you get your cup holders out here, your armrest, so space under the armrest. But I don't know, call me a dinosaur, I would have still preferred something a little more substantial out there. And if you were going to do this, then I think what Merc does is the best, where you have it on the stalks out here and then you get another cubby hole. On the safety front, you get the full alphabet soup: iBuzz, TPMS, AFS, ABS, ESC, EBD, MBA, MKB, HBA, ASR, EDS. The LNK also gets 8 airbags and of course 5 stars on the gold standard Euro NCAP crash test. But is all this enough to shift your attention away from SUVs? Let's find out. Let us start with why we like SUVs. It is of course the styling. SUVs are in your face, bold, aggressive, and you can bully people out of the way. The Tucson, it is a good looking and aggressive SUV without being ugly. Styling though is a very personal subject, and I also think the Octavia too looks very good. The SUV does score on sheer practicality. There is the ease of ingress and egress because in SUVs, you walk into it, while in the Octavia, you do have to crouch a bit. Now in terms of backseat space, I actually thought that the Octavia would score over here because the Octavia, it has 10 mm more in terms of the wheelbase, plus it is longer. But the Tucson wins this round. It has got 1 inch more free knee room. It has got much more headroom, plus this huge panoramic sunroof. It lets in more light into the cabin, makes the cabin seem even more spacious than it is. Also, you can adjust the recline angle of the backrest on the Tucson. So in terms of comfort, and the reason why you buy a SUV because you want more space, the Tucson, it wins this round on that front. And boot space. The Tucson, it has a boot space of 530 liters. The Octavia, 600 liters. Plus, when you drop the rear seats, it expands to 1,555 liters. It is a massive boot. Plus, you have all these luggage nets and slots, so you can actually put smaller things without it hammering all over the place when you're driving in the hills. Also, there is the added practicality of a notchback, and this big boot is actually electrically operated. So it is scored for the Octavia. I have been fair actually and not brought along the Safari or any other 7-seater SUV. The Tucson is a 5-seater, and if you want seating for 7, you definitely need an SUV. Everything that I've said then up till now is all for nothing, save for pure entertainment. What you do get on the Tucson is a big sunroof. Now, all the SUVs, be it the Tucson or the Compass or the Harrier, the Safari, the Hector, everything gets a sunroof. Even the Creta gets a sunroof, and not just any old sunroof, but a big panoramic sunroof. Now, like I said earlier, this should not be the reason to not buy a car, but it does not have it. The Octavia, it does not have a sunroof, so I have to give it a big fat red mark against the name. Driving pleasure and SUVs, they are getting better and better. This Tucson is a fine example of how the breed can now go around corners pretty enthusiastically. So the amount of body roll is well in control. Understeer, it sets in much later than before, and you do feel more confident driving these cars fast. There is also good grip. Of course, nice big 18-inch tires. The Octavia only gets 17, so you have more rubber on the road. But truth be told, these SUVs, they do handle well. And because you sit a little higher, you have better sight lines, so you can see through corners better. So on the whole, the Tucson is not going to disappoint if you enjoy driving. This is almost car-like. Almost car-like. Of course, SUVs, they also give you that sense of safety and security because you're sitting high up, so you can see it better, and that sort of puts you in a more secure frame of mind. Now, it doesn't really actually translate into better safety numbers. That all depends on the basic layout of the car and how much strength is there in the platform. But you just get the sense of being in a more secure car because you're sitting higher up, so you have a little more confidence in the car. Now, this also depends on how you like to sit in a car. I personally prefer to sit as low as the seat can go. So the Tucson, even though you sit higher, I try and put the seat as low as possible. And I have actually criticized the Tucson for having the seat a little too high up. I like to sit even lower down. And in the Octavia, when I drive it, the seat is as low as it can go. So it is a lot to do with personal preference. But there's no getting away from the fact that you do feel slightly more confident in an SUV, slightly more secure in an SUV. Of course, some people, they like to sit even higher up, so they take the seat all the way up as far as it can go. So even though the Tucson has a high sit seating position, they prefer this really high sit seating position. So you get this king of the world feel. You're sitting so high up, and then you drive because you got no leverage, so and then you act a little like a maniac. And do people do sit like this? It just baffles me. And you go around corners and just rule of thumb, just put the seat as low as it can go, and then maybe 2 steps higher up, and you're perfect for the configuration of your car. And what about the ability to go over bad roads? After all, that's a big reason why people buy SUVs. That and the ground clearance. Now, the Tucson has a ground clearance of 170 mm. The Octavia has 137 mm. So 33 millimeters difference, which is not that much. But truth is, the Tucson does have more ground clearance. So if the roads get really atrocious, the Tucson might be able to get you to the end of it without the belly touching down. Then there is the other aspect of SUVs. Now, I'm only generalizing here, but in general, SUVs are slightly better built than cars. So after 3 years, 50,000 kilometers, SUVs feel a little tighter. Cars start to rattle and squeak a little earlier, whereas SUVs, they feel a little tighter and that they can take a beating, and that is a big difference. And that's the reason why SUVs in Indian conditions, with the roads that we have, they still have the edge over cars, especially if you're going to be driving through small village roads and taking in a lot of bad roads on your regular commute. A big factor now that the Octavia is only petrol is fuel efficiency. The Tucson can be had with both diesel and petrol, so that is a big plus in its favor. But let us be fair and talk only petrols. The big aggressive front end of the Tucson no doubt looks great, but it isn't aerodynamically great, and that means you get 12.95 kmpl. The aerodynamic shape and of course inherent efficiency of the TSI engine on the Octi means you get 15.81 kmpl on the ARAI cycle. So that is nearly 2 kmpl more, and every bit counts when petrol is at $100. I must also point out, and this is thanks to our friends at Harmonix Tuning in Bangalore and all the other guys that we feature in the tuned section of Evo India magazine. So they've written back and told us that all these Volkswagen Group, the Gen 3B engines, which is what the Octavia gets, have a very high compression ratio as standard. So they work best with 95 octane petrol. Not 91, but 95 octane petrol. So if you want this engine to liberate all 187 horses, you need to spend another $10 per liter of petrol. And more than fuel efficiency, the Octavia gives you power. So this TSI engine, it makes a full 50 horsepower more, and because it is turbocharged, you get a whopping 128 Newton meters more. So that low down grunt which makes performance effortlessly accessed, that is there in the Octavia. The Octavia chassis is also more fun, more engaging, more involving when you chuck it around corners. Now that said, the diesel Tucson, that closes up the gap. So that makes 182 bhp of power. So it is almost there, just 5 bhp down on the Octavia. But because that is diesel, it makes 400 Newton meters of torque. So 80 Newton meters more than the Octavia. So that does close up the gap in terms of performance, because you do get a diesel engine on the Tucson. And on that front, I must add that quality of fuel still around India is not something that anybody can guarantee. And especially in the smaller towns, villages, you're not going to get really high quality petrol. And that is a reason why people buy diesel SUVs in this country. Just the fact that you can't access and you can't guarantee the quality of fuel all across the country. Diesels, they are still relevant. That is the honest truth of the matter. Of course, once the next step of the BS6 emission norms that are going to come in 2 years, that will make diesel engines even more expensive, and that might probably kill off diesel engines. It will definitely kill off small capacity diesel engines in small cars like hatchbacks and everything. But as of now, where we stand right now, diesels, they still do make sense. So what do I think of the Octavia? Well, I've loved every single generation of the Octavia, and this new one is no different. It is very good to look at, very good interiors, powerful engine, still fun to drive, and most importantly, from the Indian context, the ride quality has gotten even better, so much so that it reminds me of the Superb. Now, I just hope that Skoda price it aggressively, because otherwise there's a whole fleet of SUVs breathing down its neck. I would expect this to be priced at around 20 to 25 lakh rupees, but the indications that we've got is 25 to 30 lakh rupees. The Hyundai Tucson, the petrol one, is actually 24 lakh rupees. And that brings me to the big question: should you buy a car or should you buy an SUV? Now, there is no two ways about it. An SUV is still more in your face. You sit much higher. You get a better sense of the road and better sense of security. Also, better ground clearance and better suited to bad, broken roads. But ultimately, a car is still a car to drive. It is much nicer. It puts a wider smile on your face. Ultimately, and thank God for that, a car still outscores an SUV. Hold on. Before you go, we do know the Octavia prices. The car has been launched and there are two variants. The style is 26 lakh rupees and the LNK, the one that we have tested and the one that you have seen on the video, is 29 lakh rupees. Now, this is premium pricing, but to be fair, this is exactly what Skoda indicated to us. They said 25 to 30 and it is bang there. Now, Skoda, they are targeting the premium German rivals. Cars like the C-Class, the 3 Series, the A4. They're not really looking at the SUV that we spoke about or even other D-segment cars like the Elantra. The only problem is Skoda also have the Superb, and the Sportline variant is only 3 lakh more than the LNK Octavia. How that is going to play out, we'll be really interested to see. And of course, what do you think about the pricing? Drop it in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. Read the full review of the new Skoda Octavia and how it compares against the Hyundai Tucson in the latest issue of Evo India magazine. It is out on stands right now, or you can order it online on Amazon, Flipkart, and also on evoindia.com/magazine, where there are really cool subscription offers and discounts on single issues. Subscribe to the Evo India channel and hit the bell icon to keep pace with the thrill of driving.